Welcome. My name's Deborah Carver. You're watching Relationship Status Update. It's a salon presented by the Content Technologist. And we've been publishing the Content Technologist newsletter for over 4 years, and we're very excited to expand into more virtual events, starting with this informal but informative gathering. So we created this show for a few reasons. We definitely wanted to connect and engage our readers in new ways. And we want to take advantage of the prevalence of low-cost video editing and streaming software. It's definitely a lot cheaper and easier to put together a live stream than it was 3 or 4 years ago. So we're content technologists and we want to experiment with the new tech. So here we are. And also, we kind of want to fix or at least make B2B or business to business media a little bit better. The thing with B2B media historically is that it's usually aimed at executives and investors or Wall Street Journal types. And I don't know about you, but that's not me. I don't read things in business papers that, they may help me from an executive perspective, thinking about trends, but it doesn't really help me do my day-to-day job as a content strategist, as a content professional. So, because like many of you, my work requires a lot of skill and experience, and it changes all the time, especially because I work in digital. And so despite the explosion of communities and newsletters, there's not that many resources where knowledge workers can skill share with intermediate and advanced techniques openly online. Knowledge workers love to talk about what they do. And so we, with Content Technologists, want to create places to do that. And so this live salon is one of those. And it's also fun to experiment with things like small scale video because we think B2B media can and should be fun while being informative and practical. So frankly, while there's so much content about content out there, not much of it is all that fun. B2B exists in this kind of perceived corporate reality where everyone's very serious and stuffy. Or there's this other side of it where content around UX and content strategy and social media can be like weirdly angry or nitpicky of others' work. And we don't like that either. We want to have fun without making fun of others or without making light of others' work. And we want to learn a few things while we're at it. And so with that, we'd love to hear from our inaugural sponsor, Rocky.io. Matt can't be here today from Rocky, but I had a chat with him yesterday, and here are a few snippets.
I'm Matt Laybourne. I'm the founder of Rocky.
Glad to have you here. How do you know your content that you've been putting on your website, that you've been creating all year? How do you know if it's good?
This was essentially my frustration when I worked at an agency. We constantly have clients going, how good is our content? And then you put a number in front of them from GA and you go, look, the dwell time is 2 minutes. And they go, what does that mean? And I'm sort of like, I don't really know what it means. Like, it's seemingly quite good that someone was on a page for this long, but there must be a better way. So that's why we started building Rocky. It was like, well, the only way we're really going to understand whether content resonates, whether it answered the question that person had, is by asking them. So we've created a set of feedback widgets which go on nearly any type of content. Rocky is a content feedback platform. It's the quickest and easiest way of finding out how valuable your content is. So you can install it on nearly any type of content, whether it's on your website, gated assets, offline assets, even events. It's a way of collecting feedback from your audience. You get a rating, you can understand more about your target persona, and you can get the feedback on why it was good, and sometimes if it was bad, how you could make things better as well. So it's great for content optimization and making sure your content resonates with the audience.
And so how are you measuring success? What are the metrics that you look at when you're working with clients on Rocky?
The thing that we've actually started to gravitate towards the most is the rating, because it gives us a really quick way. So the thing that's interesting is, like, this is why we've embedded GA4 and Search Console, is very quickly in one view, you can go, okay, here's how I perform on SERP. Here's the number of impressions, my ranking, click-through rate. Cool. I get an idea of how that's working. I've got GA4 telling me engagement rate, conversions, and kind of the session data as well. And then I've got rating, and it might be like, I can really quickly spot correlations like, I don't know, really low engagement. Why is that? Low rating. What's going on here? And then you've got another button there and go, what's the feedback? Is there something really obvious that we didn't get right? I can go and adjust it. Same with high performing content. You can start to go, okay, we know why that really lands. We know why that really works. So it's actually the rating. We're essentially added one more metric into GA4 that GA4 doesn't do.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. That was Rocky's really great software. You can find them at rocky.io. Check them out and let them know where you heard about them. All right. So it's really great to have everyone here. And we chose social media as our first salon topic because it's changed so radically in the past year. And also because it's not my area of expertise at all. So I wanted to bring in some experts. So I would love to introduce our panelists. Emily Rashad is a content writer and social media manager. She works with clients to create digital content that builds brand awareness, increases website traffic, and grows their social media presence. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Deborah. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining. All right. Kate Lindsay is a freelance writer and co-founder of the internet culture newsletter Embedded. Her work has appeared in The Atlantic, New York Times, GQ, and Vulture. She lives in New York with her partner and 2 poorly behaved cats. What's up, Kate? Glad to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me. I forgot I included the cats bit in there.
Well, yeah, it's cool. My cats are poorly behaved too. That's why they're locked in the bedroom right now. They're not going to join. And then Eric Hansen, with more than 25 years experience in the marketing and communications industry, Eric Hansen has been providing mid-sized and Fortune 500 level companies across the US with custom social media audits, strategies, coaching, and content development as the founder of Eric Hansen Social Media for the past 13 years. He also runs a really amazing newsletter. And we're super excited to have Eric here. Hi.
Hello, happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday. So great to have you all here. So in the past week, or in the past few weeks, there's been some news and updates from social media. One of the things that hasn't happened is the men in charge of Meta and X have not had whatever kind of fight they're going to do. So we don't have to talk about that. I'm happy about that. But what some of the things I picked up in the past few weeks, Clubhouse, if you remember them from the early pandemic, they've added group text chats. And all I remember, I never actually used Clubhouse. I remember there was a Clubhouse for whale sounds. So where people just would log on and just make whale sounds at each other. So I hope those people have found the text chats too and are texting whale sounds to each other now. Instagram is testing some more options around just close friends streams or paid streams. TikTok is running an ad on streaming networks that claims it helps children learn how to read. And LinkedIn has essentially added, which is kind of the most LinkedIn thing ever, which is that they tried all these they tried to add stories, they tried to add all different things. But what they wound up sticking with and has been performing well recently is basically a PDF slideshow. The new kind of carousel LinkedIn is very like, oh, and upload your PDF. So I think it's fun to look at all the changes in social media and see how networks are evolving. But as the great David Byrne once asked, we want to know, how did we get here? How did we get to this state of social media in 2023? So in your own words, Emily, we're going to start with you. What's happened in the past year with social media?
Too much. Everybody, I think, is just trying to be everybody else and not sticking to their roots of what they were known for. And I understand wanting to come out with new features to keep people engaged. But when you don't listen to people about those features, it isn't really doing what you want it to do. So I think it's a lot of people doing what sounds good and what they think people want with while totally ignoring like what people are asking for.
All right, Kate, what do you think's happened in the past year?
Yeah, very similar to what Emily said. Specifically, it kind of seems that all these the big apps that we know from 2010s like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, they all saw TikTok's success and were like, we're going to do that too. And like Emily was saying, that meant they went so far and away from the sort of original purpose of themselves that everyone signed up for. And sort of the thing I'm hearing with even just the updates you were just sharing just before we started speaking, Deborah, is that they all seem to be moving back towards text or back towards sharing with a smaller audience. And I think that's because those are the two key things that in their pursuit of being TikTok, they kind of abandoned. And then everyone was like, well, we actually liked that.
Yeah. Eric, anything to add? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'll tackle a different angle. I agree with what everything Emily and Kate just said, but I think a few things in audits and strategy work I do. I see social media teams are more stretched than ever before. Many teams are one-person team, and they're freaking out because we're going on, 3 years post-pandemic, too much work, adding platforms, all this stuff. Number two, we're still seeing brands post way too much on social media, with engagement levels dipping, which seems like it's contributing to the stress levels of social media folks. And number three, I feel like brands are trying to game the platforms too much, and they're going away from creativity. So like your point about PDFs on LinkedIn, like that's one of the games, right? Like, oh, those are performing really well, we need to use those. It's like at the expense of creativity, I wouldn't do that. So we seem to be seeing a lot of that too.
Yeah. And Eric, do you think that's any different than a decade ago? How has that changed since 10 years ago when the social explosion really happened?
Yeah, more. Because 10 years ago, 2013, I mean, Instagram was still relatively new. TikTok wasn't around, obviously. Creativity was still a little bit at a premium, and now it's matured, and all these there's more social media people. There's more process and company invested in it, and now it's all about gaming the stats towards the goals. And we've gone too far that way, and it's time. I think it'll come back, but it needs to come back a little bit creatively.
Yeah. Kate, any thoughts on differences from 10 years ago from now? Because you're not a social media manager, you're more from the journalist perspective.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing that comes to mind is from the journalist perspective is just sharing articles. And that's kind of a real crisis that journalism is in right now because Twitter, these places, Facebook has kind of abandoned news, and that used to be a huge traffic driver for places I work for. Twitter never has been a huge driver of clicks to news articles, but it certainly isn't now, especially because there's been a lot of suppressing and gaming the system. And so it's kind of forcing journalists who are not native necessarily to video to, go on places like TikTok or kind of position themselves as influencers, because that's just how news is being consumed now, especially by younger generations, which is like what everyone wants to capture.
Yeah. Emily, any thoughts?
I think too, from 10 years ago, people are realizing now, still starting to, that it's a job and it's not just, I feel like, 10 years ago, it was like, oh, here's this other cool thing I can do to promote my business. I can, get an Instagram, or, Facebook is driving link clicks for me. But now people are like, there's too much and you need to hire somebody. But I don't think we're at the place where people are totally seeing the value in that. They just know they need to do it, and they don't really understand the cost behind it and what they need to be doing. Because when they see all these different things, it's just another person to dump something on. Oh, we got to make something for Threads now, and we need to, bang out 10 TikTok videos in an hour because we got to move on to this new thing that's come out. So definitely has changed in 10 years. I'd like to reevaluate this in another 10 years and hope that people are seeing more value in supporting the people that are making all the content.
Yeah. And Eric, actually, I have a question for you. As far as social media teams that you're seeing, you said there's lots of teams of one. Are there, what's the largest social media team that you've worked with? Just at larger companies, I'm curious.
Good question. Yeah, I do. I work with, I think their social media teams maybe 7 or 8 people total. So
yeah.
You talk about the biggest of the big, only has 8. So
yes. Yeah.
I've seen stats before that show the percentages, and it's I think it was 30% have 1, and up to 80% have less than 3. So you're talking about really small teams.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's challenging because there's just so many different networks now. So what are teams doing to catch up with the amount of networks? Is it just a scramble? Is anyone like really great at getting uh getting everyone on board with the new networks they're going for strategy, or is it just kind of like a free for all right now? Would you say, Eric?
Oh, I think it's all about prioritizing. I mean, and
Yeah.
again, in the work, the audits I'm doing right now, it's like one of the findings is always like you need to prioritize your networks. Like you don't need to be on all of them, and preferably you need to be on like 2, maybe 3. And they're still focused on like we need to be on these networks, namely like right Twitter or X right now, right? Like people are still prioritizing that, and they're seeing no engagement or no reach, and it's like, why are you doing that? You don't need to do it anymore.
Yeah. And Emily, with your clients, you work with more small businesses. Is it like, how are you seeing that shift? You're saying that some people are seeing the need to do more social media, but they're just not staffing up. Is that kind of what's happening?
I hear a lot of, I believe the direct quote would be, I know I need to do this, I just don't have time. And so they do, like, people are not really sure. I think TikTok contributes to a lot of it, right? People were like, I'm not going to get on TikTok. I don't have time for another thing. And then they watched it like take off and they're like, oh, I really should have done that. I don't want to make that mistake again. And so then to Eric's point, they're, trying to be everywhere instead of focusing on one thing. And when you are a team of one and maybe you're just a solopreneur and you are literally half a team because you're trying to do 10 other team projects for your own business, it really comes down to like, how can you repurpose? And I think part of the challenge is that that social media is filled with these experts that may or may not be experts telling you all these things you need to do. Post this many times, make content this way, do these things. And people are so sucked into that they're focused on either I'm doing that or I'm not doing it at all, and less of a how can I repurpose this and use things across different channels. While that may not be like the top strategy, it's what I'm capable of at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of that, like just figuring out what's happening at the moment. And also Emily does the social media for Content Technologist, and I'm definitely guilty of the like, I don't know what to do. I need to do it. I'm sorry, Emily. Like, um, so, but one area of social media where many of us are experts was not 10, but 15 years ago. For a lot of content professionals of a certain age, while Facebook was the first social network that we joined, Tumblr was the first social network that we loved. And we were talking about this, how all the networks are adding all these new features. And a few months ago, I was just like, well, even though I'm not on Tumblr anymore, I haven't been on Tumblr for 10 plus years. Even though Tumblr is still active and still going, which, they're on the 3rd owner now. Good job, Tumblr. There's still people there. But it seems like every social network, Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn, just wants to do exactly what Tumblr did. So a few days ago, we asked our panelists, when did every social network become Tumblr?
The Tumblrification of social media, I would say, started happening around the pandemic, which is when the more mainstream tech companies like Meta and Twitter started to realize that these internet communities and that being online were relationships and communities that they should take seriously, which is something that Tumblr always did. And so they started to mimic some of the same things, which is what could they do to take 100% of a person's attention. I grew up on Tumblr, and Tumblr had all I need. I could repost, I could post content myself, I could post video, I could post audio, I could talk with my friends. It had everything. But it was also a much denser community, whereas sort of these apps like Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, they want to speak to everyone, which is a little bit impossible. So they're adopting all these features, and it's making the apps either really diluted in the case of Instagram, or in the case of Twitter/X, really chaotic and just weirdly a place you want to spend less of your time, let alone 100%.
Yeah, I think that Tumblr itself is not the blueprint. Like, I don't think Instagram is sitting down and being like, Tumblr had these features, but I think the core features of Tumblr and what it represented at its time is the core of what people are looking for. So your ability to share
text posts, your ability to share photos, and your ability to share videos are really the main things that people are looking to share and use to communicate with other people, whether it's their own thoughts and feelings or, reposting something that speaks to them and represents how they're feeling. And so at the end of the day, no matter how new social platforms twist it, like there's only so many ways to allow people to share text posts and photos and videos. And so I think those are the core basics, and Tumblr just was one of the first people to do it. And I think the same could maybe be said about MySpace and other earlier platforms in terms of really hitting those core elements of being able to just express your feelings and your life online.
I tend to think that that is happening, obviously, and it may end up being a signal that buys of social media as we know it. People are tired of the algorithms. They're tired of all the social networks being the same. They're tired of being sold to. They're tired of all the stuff that goes along with like public facing social media. And right now more people are migrating towards dark social, private niche social communities more and more. So that trend may end up being one of the key signals that social media as we know it is over.
Amazing. Yes, that was kind of our pre-record panel discussion. So I have a question for our panelists, another question for our panelists right now, since we're a little bit ahead of time. So what are your social media routines professionally these days? What do you do daily, weekly, professionally to support clients, but also support your own social media? And I'd like to start with Kate here on this one.
Yeah, so it's hard to be someone who writes about social media, creates on social media, and then also is like a regular person who wants to use social media, because they all really blend. And so I have to set a lot of boundaries. Like I like don't check social media when I wake up or right before I go to bed. Like those are all personal stuff. But when it comes to promoting, like, if we take my newsletter, I would say I'm similarly a little bit in a lost time period. I'll still put it on Twitter, but Substack especially. Twitter really, what's the word? Sort of hides those links that they're not getting shown to people. And so I'm hearing you guys talk about like, why are you still trying? I'm like, why am I still trying? So I found the other things I'll do is I'll post it on Instagram. If it's a larger topic, I will make a TikTok about it. I will put on makeup for the day and film myself and make a TikTok. And that can do well sometimes if you get, like, it'll be through search, and people usually aren't going to really, there's no easy way to click on the app. But I found the best thing for my Substack is just rather than using those tools to try and get people's attention when they're doing something else on social media, just really focusing on the community you've already built. And so trying to just speak to the audience that I already have, trying to sort of, it's always great to get responses, but, so much of our growth comes from people like forwarding the email to someone or other Substackers recommending us. And so that's always, one, more effective, but also just more meaningful to get a real person recommending you than to kind of invade someone else's feed and hope you can kind of interrupt their time and get them to come look at your thing.
Yeah. Emily, what are your routines like now?
Definitely like Kate, it's hard to, kind of create those lines of like, I'm on social media to scroll as a human versus I'm on social media to scroll for research purposes versus I'm here to like do work for a client. And so I'm definitely notorious for the, putting other people's businesses before your own. And so sometimes not always keeping up with my social media, but also focusing on engagement. And so less like I need to post these things, but more somebody else has posted this and I can start conversations with them about these things that I find interesting. I don't always need to be the person that's putting the thing out there hoping people engage with me, because I find that a lot of people and businesses are I made this content, why is nobody engaging with it? But they're not doing it back. And it really is just a matter of treating people how you want to be treated. And I've also been experimenting more with using close friends features on Instagram. I find that anything I post there gets significantly more engagement than just regular content. So focusing more on some of that content just to kind of keep the DMs open and start talking to more people.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's I've never paid attention to my close friends feature. Like I set it up once years and years and years ago, and I don't think even though I have more close friends, I don't really maintain that. So that's interesting to know that there's that a little bit of boost there. And I think I don't know, it is really hard. I used to say, well, you shouldn't post on social media unless you're actively using social media all the time. But I think now, as a social media professional, that's getting harder and harder. And as a content professional, that's getting harder and harder. Eric, what are your thoughts about that? What are your routines, and like how have you changed them in your thoughts on those routines in the past few years?
Well, first of all, I think it's interesting to hear my routines are wildly different than Kate and Emily, and maybe some of it has to do with age group, right? Because I'm far older, and the way I use social media is much different. So like, because I have a podcast and a newsletter, and I'm a professor, I have to curate a lot of content. So I use this tool called Feedly. I used to use Google Analytics years ago, or Google
Reader, RIP.
Google Reader.
Yeah.
Years ago, and I use Feedly now. So I have to curate all this content. So I read a ton during the week. So that's a huge routine I have. As far as social media, I really only use LinkedIn anymore. I got kicked off Twitter for some reason, which was unfortunate. I don't know why. I didn't do anything weird, but I get kicked off. So that was unfortunate, but I don't really care because I wasn't really using it professionally anyways. But LinkedIn, I do use a lot. And I think I'm probably the anomaly in that I don't really have a content calendar. I have a strategy in my head, but I don't really have this big, huge plan. But that's worked out pretty well for me over the years. And I just really use it as a tool to connect with people and get to know people, because that's like, unlike other people that might have an agency, it's just me as a consultant. So like, I feel like people are going to hire me because they know me. So like, if they get to know me, they'll like me and they'll hire me. So that's kind of my MO on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit different than the way some other people might use it.
Yeah, I think, and I also am primarily Instagram's my fun time and LinkedIn is my work time. And as being primarily a LinkedIn user, one of the things that's also helped me recently is realizing that there's a lot of lurkers. There's a lot of lurkers on every social network. At least Instagram stories tells you exactly how many lurkers and who saw your story, but LinkedIn doesn't. But I know that I still see a lot of reach when I post regularly, even when there's not a lot of comments or not a lot of likes or feedback. And I think it's important to realize that there are, at least I would say on the main social networks, there's a lot of people passively consuming content. And that's why we're making it, but also that are maybe less social about social media, but are still valuing your content. And I think that is important to realize, especially as a professional, and especially on some of those network, like a network like LinkedIn, or even just Instagram generally. The Instagram main feed, where I've heard that cool people don't post there anymore. I don't know. I'm also older, so I'm like, okay, I just will post here sometimes too. So yeah, things have changed, but also, there's still lots of people lurking, lots of people engaging passively, even when the active signal or the like may not actually be there. And with that, we're going to go to our next segment featuring our managing editor, Wyatt Cody. And yeah, they're going to talk a little bit about their routines and their social media practice. Oh, there I am again. Let's see.
Hi, everybody. My name is Wyatt, and I'm the managing editor of the Content Technologist newsletter. Actually quite excited to talk to you today about social media, but I think my comments are going to be a bit different than the other panelists who I suspect are going to talk more about industry-wide changes with social and some kind of newer strategies to how to get social posts distributed. I'm going to focus more on the production side of things. And that's because in addition to working with Deb on the newsletter, I also run a research design firm in Los Angeles where I work almost exclusively with artists and creatives. And what I help them do is develop intellectual property, which is often in the form of portfolio websites, publications, and other forms of quote unquote subsidiary works that kind of amplify what they do. So as you might imagine, social media is a big part of that puzzle, and trying to figure out how to get artists who like to spend time alone or in the studio, not on camera, to put themselves either in front of a camera for pictures or for video like this, it can be a little bit of a challenge. And as a research designer, I'm a big proponent of what I call research performance, meaning I do things in order to learn them, and I ask other people to do things in order to learn them. And I find that process to be revealing. And so what I want you to walk away with today is at least kind of 3 concepts that I'm sure you already know, but they're just going to be kind of bolted down and emphasized. And so the first one is practice. And I'm going to particularly talk about when I use the word practice to describe what I do as a kind of professional. But I'm also going to talk about what I described as mirroring exercises, and then also documentation, which if you're an artist or work in the art world, you know is very important. So why I call what I do a practice is because it's something I do every day. It's also something I really value and I want other people to value. So putting myself in a situation like the one you see where I have a little stage in my studio and I've created a space where I can easily kind of make posts like this has, I think, actually given me quite a bit of ammunition to make the social media posts I want to make. So first and foremost, I don't just use this for social posts. I use this to work with clients to make educational videos. I use it to document myself playing music. So I'm a musician, but I also swim. So I'm a big proponent of practice, obviously. But so for example, when I am playing guitar to figure out what I'm doing for better or for worse, when I'm playing and I'm recording myself, it's really easy to cut those kind of videos up into smaller sizes or to grab film stills and repost them on social. Now, I'm really lucky that what I do is in the creative field and that I'm trying to help people feel sometimes humiliated productively or just less humiliated, depends as the artist changes. But basically, it's like I can be a bit vulnerable, and I think that has really worked. And also, I have 2 social accounts. So I have a personal one and a one for my research design firm. And it's for me, I like that division, but I also think having an interplay between them where people can see that, you know, it is me and I am it, at least for now, has been really helpful. But as you might have noticed when I was describing practicing music in particular, that is what I mean by mirroring, having some kind of relationship to the content you're making that you can see yourself making it. So you can start assessing what you need to do either better or is fine or is actually really good, right? You won't know until you record it. And I think that's really important to me. As you can maybe notice right now, I'm wearing a hat. I took a couple takes on this video and I did not like the way my hair looks. I put on a hat, easy fix. I also noticed that my glasses, because I have the blue light filter, were reflecting back and making me look like an alien. So I took those off. I would not have known any of that unless I began experimenting with the camera and doing a number of takes until I got comfortable. I think I'm pretty comfortable now. I could probably be more comfortable, but you know, someday. And then the last thing I want to talk about, which I think is the thing that sits at the center of those 2 concepts, is documentation. I think a lot of people in the kind of creative fields get really obsessed with getting the deliverable, like on the table, done, signed, sealed, delivered. And they forget that along the way, you can collect tons of B-roll. I've already kind of gone over that strategy and laying out how I use the kind of stuff that's the recordings from practice and redistribute them on social. But I just want to say they can go pretty much anywhere. The cool thing about the kind of period we're in and the technology that's available to us is that we can take different media forms, translate them, remix them. And what you really want is just a kind of big archive of content that you can work through on demand. And so what I really love about this practice is it gives me a sense of what I can kind of finagle along the way, or even what I can kind of push together that other people aren't doing that's specific to me. So I hope you walk away with a sense of little bit of endearment as you see me kind of prostrating myself in front of the camera, but also just kind of know that it's like not that hard. I'm not a really good public speaker. I know that might not seem to be the case right now. I'm also not someone that really likes to kind of look at myself in the camera or the mirror, but I have found it really, really productive, not just for the reasons I described just now, but also getting to know how the user feels or how other kind of people that are using social in this way feel. And I think that information, those feelings are the kind of stuff that make media really move. And so if you want to be, hip and on the trends and make your social media posts really fly, I don't think it's about appealing to everybody. I think it's about appealing first to yourself and knowing what you have to offer, and then giving that in the most generous but boundaried way possible to other people. And so with that, I'm going to bid you adieu. Thank you, and I hope you've really enjoyed the panel.
Amazing. Thanks, Y. All right, so we were going to do a live poll game, but we are having some issues with the software, so we're just going to do it with our panelists. But this game should be pretty fun. Let's bring everyone back. Hooray. So our first game is called Dead Social. And we're going to go through some old or obscure social networks. And I would like each of our panelists to disclose whether they posted on it, whether they only lurked, whether they've never heard of it, or whether they just never tried it because it didn't seem important. And from the viewers, since we can't get our poll widget working, if you want to comment, if you hear a social network that you are on, please drop that in the comments, and we will we'll take a look. So the first of our dead social networks, this one actually isn't dead. It's still very much happening, although I don't know if it's cool anymore, and I was always too old to use it, which is Be Real. Which of you are on Be Real? Let's do Emily. Yeah, Emily is. Kate?
I was on it, and I haven't used it in months and months and months, but I was when it started.
Yeah, Emily was on it. Yeah.
Once a month, if it catches me at a really cool time, I'll be like, okay, I'll still post here. But I kind of stopped the posting because people didn't need to see my laptop every day,
Yeah, that was my thing with Be Real. Eric?
Was on it for a brief period to spy on my teenagers.
There you go. All right, the second obscure social network. Well, it's not obscure; it's dead now. Vine. Let's raise our hands. Who was on Vine who posted on Vine? Never post.
No.
I actually did. I had 3 posts. I had 3 6-second videos. Did you lurk?
Definitely.
I think, I don't know, it was a little bit too, I was in college. It existed. It's funny because I'm on TikTok all the time now, but for some reason, I think the version of me then was healthier. And so it was like, I don't want to watch a bunch of 6-second videos, but this version of me is happy to.
Yeah. Well, now they're up to 10 minutes. So
yes,
yeah. Emily, Vine?
Same. I lurked in the sense that if it, much like TikToks today, if it gets really popular and it makes it to all the other platforms and people are talking about it. So I could reference you a couple cool Vines, but I wasn't vining or whatever the kids were calling it.
Yeah. All right. Next dead social network, Google Plus. I was on Google Plus because I've been working in SEO for 10 years, and we had to. Anyone else actually on Google Plus and posted? Not even Eric? No?
No. Lurked, but no.
I may have made a profile because, but I definitely never used it or lurked or anything.
I think I posted once or twice, but I did have a client at that time where we were posting regularly to it. Not that it was really doing much.
I was gonna say, do you miss it?
I don't miss it. I don't miss it. That was definitely one of those platforms where I was like, we don't have the bandwidth for special content, so we're gonna repurpose things we're posting to Facebook at the
That's exactly what it was too. It was like, let's repurpose our content there. I feel like.
Yeah. The cope strategy. Create, launch, publish everywhere. All right, Periscope. Did anyone stream on Periscope, Eric?
I definitely lurked on that one too, because that was right in my prime. That and Google Plus were right in my prime social media years, but never posted though. No.
Yeah.
Never even opened it. I recognize the name and I know what it does, but I would hear news stories about stuff happening on it. I've never opened it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Here's the fun one. Peach. Does anyone remember Peach?
I remember this. I think I did get on it, posted one thing, and then nothing. But I can't. I'm like, oh, that's an obscure one. I think a lot of people got excited about it for one day. It feels like.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, Peach was like a one-day phenomenon. No one else.
I'm gonna admit, I don't
Peach?
even know what that is.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is either.
I never heard of
it was like in the time when everyone's like, there's a new social network, we should be on it. I mean, that's kind of all been, but yeah, it was like 10 years ago ish. And it was like, oh, let's be on Peach. All right, Yo. Did anyone ever Yo anyone?
Well, I do remember that one, but no.
Yeah, no, I didn't
remember
actually.
it.
I never signed up. Stumble Upon. Was anyone on Stumble Upon?
That one definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Were you all posting on Stumble Upon?
No, I just used the thing that to stumble upon. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was good. They should bring that one back.
Yes.
I think there's because I've always looked into this because I always compare to Stumble Upon as like a good algorithm or whatever because you're just like, I think there's like a Google plugin version, but it was like bought and dissected. Like it's not the same thing anymore.
But what we're hearing is we want to bring back Stumble Upon.
Yes.
All right. Cool. All right. Here's some really old ones. Xando. Does anyone remember Xando? Xando.
Do not remember that.
Claire Beveridge remembers Xando. Xando was like a LiveJournal Diaryland thing. I did actually have an account on Xando for in my early diary days. All right, two more. This is my favorite to bring up. Makeout Club. Was anyone on or even heard of Makeout Club?
Never heard of that.
Eric, did you heard of it?
I have not heard of that.
Okay.
No.
It was the first social network I ever heard of. Because it was like pre-Friendster, and it was named after Get Up Kids song. So it was like a bunch of emo kids. And I was actually probably even too young to create a profile because I was like, I'm not putting my picture on the internet, but I definitely lurked on Makeout Club to find cute emo boys. And the last one, Friendster.
Friendster, yeah.
You were on Friendster?
Yep. That was the first one I think I joined years ago.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know when it was, 2006 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else on for Emily or Kate? You guys are probably pre-Friendster. Yeah, I remember the thing I remember about Friendster was like us talking about like we were talking about it, they're like, it's like friend trading cards. Like that's how we describe social networks to each other. Yes, and from the audience, LiveJournal, yeah. Anyone on LiveJournal?
No, but I was that was like I was definitely I think that's when I started using Tumblr. Like I opted for Tumblr and a lot of people were on LiveJournal. Yeah.
I made some mistakes using LiveJournal. So I was on LiveJournal. And yeah, MySpace.
Oh yeah.
Were we all on MySpace?
That was like
a heavy lurker, but I never had a profile. But I was definitely lurking all the kids at school.
Oh, that like it was like a requirement in my school to be on MySpace, and everyone was ranking their top 8. Everyone was ranking their friends the meanest feature ever invented. Yeah.
Facebook stuff. Yeah.
But the first one was Tom's my first one, so
right.
Just let him be there.
Yeah.
Still the most iconic social media profile picture is Tom from MySpace.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks for participating in Dead Social. That was fun. I was like looking at the Wikipedia page of like old social networks. I'm like, wow, there's so much that happened that I don't even remember. All right. So back to our panel questions. Do you classify or group social networks these days? Like the existing prime social networks, do you classify them or kind of think of them in different buckets? And if so, how do you do that? Kate, let's start with you.
I feel like, I mean, if I were to, because I once again, I think of everything from just like promoting my work. I would say like Twitter, Threads, Substack, Notes, like everything that's trying to be Twitter. And then also recently LinkedIn is that's where I will like drop a link and then leave. And it's like really low lift. So I just hit all of them using like similar copy for each. Instagram is its own thing because I'm not very visual, but that's the one where it feels the most, I don't know have any data to back this up, but it feels the most negligent to not have a platform on. And then I think I group them just in terms of effort. It sounds like it's like whatever I can do to just get it out there. And then Instagram's a little more work, and then TikTok requires like a whole like makeup, camera setup, like internal pump up to like talk to a camera, which is terrifying. Yeah, so I think that's how I think about it. But in terms of as a user, I use them all pretty much the same in terms of just wasting my own time.
Yeah. Eric, do you have classifications, or do you think of them in different groups?
Yeah, I think you have three, really. You have entertainment, which probably starts with TikTok, maybe a little bit Instagram in there. You have information, which is really X, maybe a little bit of LinkedIn, YouTube probably crosses over those two. And then you have community, which I would say maybe LinkedIn a little bit, Reddit, stuff like that. Those kind of the three buckets I see.
Yeah. Emily, do you group?
Yeah, I classify them mentally in two ways. One being what can you repost on and like where can you overlap. So like I would put TikTok and Instagram together because I can repost my content from one to the other. Now that people are rolling out new features, it's getting like a little murkier because I'm kind of like, well, TikTok has text posts now, so can I repurpose X content there? So really I kind of group them as TikTok and Instagram to repurpose, Instagram and Facebook to share the same content similarly, and then any kind of text-based platforms, so Threads, Twitter, etc. And then on the flip side, another way that I don't think about platforms like this, but I have been involved in conversations where people are always debating what is technically a social platform versus a search engine. So like, is Pinterest a search engine or is it a social platform? Same with TikTok, moving more towards search engine. So also kind of classifying them that way too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of them. Yeah. There's the discovery platforms, which are more search engines versus TikTok is discovery versus passive. There's the active discovery versus passive discovery. And thinking about your content that way can help too.
And also platforms that are prioritizing sales versus not, but I mean, everybody is, but I mean, in the way of like Instagram shop, TikTok is pushing shop, versus platforms where you would just self-promote your own things and not sell directly in the platform.
Yeah. E-commerce versus, passive consumption. So here's one of the big questions. What is dark social? And should we fear it? And I know Eric kind of brought this up in the Tumblr question. So we're going to start with him. What's dark social?
Well, I guess it probably has many meanings. I see it as like social that is more private and that is a little bit behind the firewall, so to speak. So texting, DMing on Instagram, private communities like Slack, and that's getting a lot bigger. That's kind of where it feels like that's where social's going, really. There's just so much action there versus public facing social. It feels like it's kind of dying off, really, outside of the passive stuff, right? So I think that's going to be where people focus their efforts in the next few years, but I guess time will tell.
So are brands going to be sliding into our DMs? Is that what's
that's the question. I don't know how we do it from a brand perspective, but that's to be TBD, I guess.
Yeah. Kate, to you, what's dark social?
Well, yeah, so I had to look this up because it sounds so scary. But then when I saw it, I was like, oh, this isn't for me. Like I said, I feel like I keep coming back to this, but when I write something, to have a human share it with another human feels like the most meaningful outcome. And that's when it has started to sort of subconsciously and now consciously inform when I think about what I want to write. Like the idea of writing something that someone will send to their friend and be like, we were just talking about this, or like, this reminded me of you. Like that feels like such a that feels like why I want to write is I want people to feel seen. And I honestly think it's kind of refreshing because I grew up, or I not grew up, but more so like my career started in a world of like clickbait, where I was kind of writing things that were supposed to trick people into kind of reading them. And so it's like I am like embracing this shift of like writing something because people feel like they really it really resonates with them. But similarly, I don't know how that gets, like, because I can't be aware. I don't get a notification when that happens, so I don't know if it's happening. But I'll sometimes see it, or a friend will tell me it was sent to them, and that's always nice. But you can't. There's no real way to harness it. But I agree that that's where this is going, because there's an insider article recently that the group chat concept of the group chat killed social media because everyone's just sharing stuff with their friends. And I'm sure we'll find a way, as we do with everything else, to like analyze, monetize it, but I don't know what that looks like yet.
Yeah. Emily.
Yeah, notice things that you can't always track and where you can't control the narrative. So if people are talking about your brand on your own social profile, like, you can delete the comment, you can respond, but here it's like totally out of your hands, and you can't necessarily even know that it's happening. Like Kate and Eric said, if I text a link to somebody or something, like, the brand can only see so much, like, I can track the Google Analytics that this got read this many times, but how was it necessarily shared all the time? And I know that platforms are trying to harness that as much as possible. Like, I know if I text a TikTok to a friend, like if I send it to a friend who doesn't have TikTok, they're going to see my profile at the top, trying to like encourage them to join. And if they're on TikTok and I am too, and they send it to me, like, I'll see that they opened it. So I know we're trying more and more to crack down on that dark social, to track everything, and it's just not possible. And I was thinking about this yesterday and the dark social topic, and I would almost go out on a limb and say that Reddit can be a dark social place, because brands can't really be there the way they can on other platforms, and so they can't really control what's being said about them. And while you can search your brand name and who's talking about you, it's not trackable in the way that it is on other platforms. And so I think that is in its own way a dark social platform to kind of keep an eye on, of where you're being talked about, because it's definitely a place where people are talking about you if they have strong feelings.
Oh yes. If you have the stomach for it, go see if they're talking about you on Reddit. Yes, and yeah, that's the only thing I want to add to is, it's funny because the name dark social, like, that comes from people who do marketing attribution, so Google Analytics, and they're just like, well, it's dark because we can't track it. And it's just like, all right, but it takes the surveillance factor out of social media, which is one of the things that I think people really like. It's like, I don't want to be tracked anymore. That's why I'm sending this to you, is because I don't want to get a gazillion ads about this word I mentioned one time. So if you are the kind of person who looks in Google Analytics to find your social traffic, that your direct traffic will probably be, which is always the thing here. This is Deborah, the Google Analytics expert. I'm putting this in, which is, your direct traffic will be the one that goes up when more people are sharing via dark social. Hopefully, that's just my little dark social tip. But yeah, and this is kind of the ultimate big question. What is social media? Is texting social media? Is Slack social media? Does it have to be public to be social media? And I guess I'm gonna pick Emily.
I don't think it does. I think that the average person will not think of texting as social media or Slack as social media, especially Slack, because it's centered around work typically. But for me, social media is where you're being social, and it's where you're talking, and it's where you're sharing. And arguably, I am much more social on texting than I am on social media some days. I mean, it is social media. I guess I just contradicted myself, but on what we continue to think of as the traditional social channels, we're not thinking about it. However, I do see more and more and more brands using texting as a way to share sales and promotions. And it seems to be what I'm seeing preached to businesses more and more often for engagement. As a recipient of that form of social media, I'm kind of over it. There are days where I'm like, I just need to unsubscribe to this brand because, like, please stop texting me at 8 a.m. that this dress is on sale. I'm not going to buy it. But I do think that texting and Slack and all of those chat-based apps that we're using day in and day out are their own form of social media, even if it's not what comes to our mind immediately.
Yeah. Eric, do you want to?
Yeah, I would agree. I think I really think it is more of it's social and it's media. I mean, it's got to be the platforms where people talk to each other. And like we referenced before, that increasingly is not happening anymore. So that's where I feel like it's maybe slowly or quickly dying because it's just not happening anymore. Like you think about Twitter, like 10 to 13 years ago, that was social media. Like people were talking to each other, they're having conversations, like it was happening. Like Twitter doesn't act like that anymore. It's an information stream, and that's the way a lot of the platforms are. So like, it's not really social anymore.
Yeah.
And that kind of stinks, but that's kind of where we're at because of the surveillance issue and some of the other topics that people are just kind of tired of it.
Yeah. Kate, anything to add? Yeah.
I agree. I think like as what those platforms were in like 2010s was social media, but they all slowly or really quickly went from like people talking to each other to now people just talk out. You post it out into the void, and you don't even really hear anything back. And so I think texting and things like that are like what remains. It's like, okay, well, that's the closest thing now because like, you know, I wouldn't even really say TikTok social media at all. Like it's really hard to everything, even when you have a conversation with someone through like video features, is then displayed to strangers to observe, and it doesn't feel at all like what social media is supposed to be.
Yeah. The attitude of it's more about viewing the social aspect versus the like, oh, I actually have something nice to say and want to have a conversation with you.
I think
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say to that point about things like TikTok, I think social media platforms like that can create the social aspect in messages. I mean, I look at so many TikTokers who are friends, or like a predominant TikToker I follow just got married the other day, and there were so many TikTokers at her wedding. And I was like, how do you even know each other? And it just happens by like messaging. And so I think that the traditional social platforms are the springboard for creating conversations these days in platforms like text messages and DMs.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Technically, I know all of you except for Emily. I know Eric and Kate from social media. But do you have groups of friends who you've met on social media who are parts of your life? Because I know that I do. Some of my best friends in Minneapolis are Tumblr friends that we met in 2008 when I moved here, and we are still very good friends. Do you all have social media friends who are real life friends? Am I alone in that?
No, I definitely, I feel like as a teenager, I made a lot of friends and we on like Tumblr, and but we were just friends on Tumblr. In terms of people I've met, and who are actually my like IRL friends, social media for many of them was the tool that got us in the same place. Like we already followed each other on Twitter and then saw each other at a happy hour. So it kind of already laid some groundwork to be like, oh my God, hi, I know you from this. And it's always awkward. So it's played a role in a lot of my friendships. And then you can kind of leave the event and that then you can, you know, keep chatting. It's a real hybrid now. I wouldn't like, it used to be, these are my internet friends, and these are my real friends. And now it's like, it always starts on one, but then goes to the other and back and forth.
Yeah.
I really had that phenomenon with Twitter years ago. I remember we talked about Twitter being a conversation platform. Back when it was, I was heavily invested. And I suddenly had all these people that I knew across the country. And then I'd go to conferences and then I'd meet them in real life, and it'd be like, you met them, and it was like you'd been best friends for 10 years because you've been talking on Twitter every day for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
That was a really weird phenomenon. I don't know if that, maybe it does still happen with TikTok, like Emily said. But for me in early 2010s, that's what happened. It was weird and wonderful though. You know, it's like these people that you had common connections with, you meet them and it felt like you're best friends with them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's always what I like about social media. It's like, oh, well, I met some other cool people, and there's no pressure to meet people in real life. But if you happen to, like, it's cool. We're all just posting. All right. So we have one more short game that we're gonna do, and for this game, we are going to ask our audience to be the judge. And so you can we're just going to ask everyone these questions, and in the audience, if you have a particular favorite, you can just like add a clapping emoji. How about for the particular favorite of the question? And this is called most likely to, and it is a series of questions about social networks. Of the big social networks that we know, which one is most likely to do something or other? I hate that I can't say which one is most likely to X, because now X is actually a social network. It's not just algebra anymore. All right. So which social network do you think hosts the most multi-generational covens of witches? Which social network has the most groups of cross-generational witches?
TikTok.
Oh, interesting. I was gonna go Instagram.
I'd probably say Instagram too. Sorry, I gotta say the same thing. No.
I was thinking Facebook, just because of the multi-generational thing. Because yeah, there's the elders hang out on Facebook.
I think the hashtag witch talk hashtag is, you can get real deep there.
Oh,
So
I should do that after.
Immediately came to mind.
Awesome. So which social network hosts the most multi-generational gatherings of trolls? And by trolls, I mean the internet trolls, not like
I guess Twitter, right?
Twitter, yeah, Twitter, or X, yeah.
I probably 2 years ago I would have said Reddit, but I feel like
We'll second.
Yeah. Which social network will one day be taken over by nostalgia for Roblox?
TikTok.
Probably TikTok, right? Yeah. That's what the kids are on now, so that's what they use. Yeah.
It's funny, no one's mentioned Snapchat. I think that's all because we're older, but I also don't know if
Snapchat's like the forgotten middle child, I feel like.
It's
still going, and it's like, and people really are using it, but I never think to even ever say it.
All right. Which social network is most likely to actually be run secretly by dogs? So on the internet, no one knows if you're a dog.
I don't know why I want to say Facebook for that one.
That's what I was gonna say too. Yes.
Everyone on Facebook's just like, ruh-roh. All right. Which social network will free the nipple first?
Instagram.
I was gonna say, I would say Instagram only because it's the one place where people are really campaigning, but I could somehow see it being TikTok. But that's probably shocking if you're scrolling and then it's like, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be Tumblr, and then they took that away, which was like,
That would be the answer. I'd go with TikTok too.
Yeah. It's funny. All right. And let's do one more. Actually, no, we'll do two more. Which social network is most likely to suddenly reveal that your high school crush is now a professional lumberjack?
LinkedIn, because that's like, I always get some insane information like that whenever I go on it.
I would say Facebook. People
I was gonna say TikTok.
They show a picture of them sign, deep in the north woods of Seattle or something.
That actually happened to me. My high school crush is a professional lumberjack, and I actually found out from a newsletter, but it was just like one of those things. I'm like, when you find out someone from high school is doing something crazy, like on a social network, I love it. And which social network hosts the most embarrassing picture of you?
Oh, geez.
MySpace for sure, but I can't find it or access it but it's never been deleted, so I know it's there. And so.
Mine's probably Facebook, just because I've been on it the longest.
Yeah. Emily?
I like to think there's none, only because if it's probably Facebook, and it's not pictures that I took, because I didn't get a Facebook until I was like 25. So I thankfully was not posting my own embarrassing things, but I can guarantee people probably were posting embarrassing pictures of me sleeping or something on Facebook.
Yeah, mine's Facebook. Just actually, no, there's still some of my old Tumblrs. Like there was the gratuitous picture of yourself Wednesday. There might be some there. I don't want to look. And then which social network will you be still posting on in 10 years in spite of yourself?
I feel like Instagram.
I feel like none.
None.
I'm going to say none.
All right. I love it. All right. Well, that concludes our panel discussion. Our final part of this event is where you attendees can connect with each other. I want to say thank you so much to all our panelists. They are for joining us. They're all fantastic. And if you want to reach anyone, you can just I was just like, just email me, email Content Technologist, and we can connect you. They're all very awesome social media professionals. So, yep, happy to connect you with them. And then our final area is networking time. So if you in the hop-in go over to networking, it'll just kind of, you'll probably it's just speed networking. So you'll just be connected with someone else in the audience, and you guys can talk about your favorite social networks. You can talk about just what you do, why you're here. But yeah, we want to thank you so much for coming. This has been a lot of fun. We're going to be doing another event on the first Friday of every month this year. So October 8th is the next one. We are going to be talking about AI, and we're going to be talking about practical AI for content professionals, which I think a lot of people will be interested in. It's just, we want to talk about how we can actually, use AI generated tools or different kinds of tools also that content professionals can use. That's not necessarily, it's writing my content for me. So that's next time, October 8th. You can grab a ticket if you would like now. But again, thank you so much for coming. Enjoy speed networking, and we'll see you soon. All right. Thanks.